visit the CBOs and to sample their books so that they're running their programs in accordance with our funders' regulations. Our fiscal agent services of about 11,000, where CBOs can opt in to receive this fiscal services as part of the larger contract that DYCD has with this vendor. The next set of categories, such as marketing, public awareness, publications, consumable supplies, employee development, travel, board development, these all support the program contracts that we've highlighted above. Coming in at $50,000 of stipends for our CAB and NAB boards. And the last item in the auto contractual services is essential insurance program. This is similar to the fiscal agent services, whereby CBOs can opt into the larger citywide contract to buy insurance for their programs. The auto contractual services total budget is $2.4 million, and that comes in at 7% of the overall budget. So if we add the program contracts and auto contractual services, we've allocated a total of 85% of the CSBG award to direct services and services to support those and to those services. 15% of the award at $5.1 million covers the DYCD personnel, folks like Anita and Mike and a lot of other people in the agency who worked 100% or less than 100% on these CSBG funded programs. That's how the funding is allocated in City Fiscal Year 21. Excuse me. If we look at what expenses we have, this report is as of November 6th, but it does not include any of October expenses. It's only July through September, because our providers have until the 10th of every month to submit their previous month's expenses. So we're only reporting on a quarter of the city fiscal year, the first 3 months of the year. And as you can see, our total expenditures for the program contracts is $4.1 million, and that represents 16% of their budget. If we did straight math, we would expect a 25% spending rate, but that's not how our program works. The first 2 months of the city fiscal year, our providers are ramping up services and hiring staff if need be, and getting their programs generally up and running. And we see eventually we'll be receiving more and more invoice. And at the end of the year is when it really picks up. So I'm not alarmed that expenses at this time is only at 16% rather than 25%. An interesting feature of DYCD is that for our direct services contracts, we allow our providers, if need be, to ask for an advance of their contract. So whereas our providers have spent $4.1 million, we have actually paid out $6.4 million. And that's because we have paid an advance and we have also paid expenses. As of January, our accounts payable unit will start to recoup those advances. And by the end of the year, our year-to-date expenditures and our year-to-date payments will be exactly the same because we would have recouped advances by then. So overall, we have nearly $20 million of the program contracts funds to be dispersed to our providers. And for the program contracts, we're looking at 254 contracts. Auto contractual services expenses are the same as payments. And again, even though we only have expenditures of 1% at this point in time, this is very much in keeping with the way this program works. Within DYCD, we're spending these funds, we're finalizing contracts, we're setting up items that we want to purchase, and we're getting the ball rolling to have these services be purchased. And we fully expect that we'll be spending down 100% of this at the end of the year. So please don't be alarmed that expenses are only at 1% when we're reporting on 3 months for the fiscal year. Personal services, we have our first 25% year-to-date expenditures in PS, personal services. Altogether, of the $33.7 million, we've spent $5.4 million, and we've paid out $7.7 million. I want to just take you to do a comparison for our last meeting that we had in September. For the September 10th meeting, for our program contracts, we had expenditures of $365,000. And today, nearly 2 months later, we have 4.1 million. So that's a significant increase. And that's the kind of increases we'll see as we go along. Other contractual services, we had spent nearly $30,000. We have not moved the needle very much in this category. We are now at $35,000. And for personal services, we did not have any expenditures at that point in time. And now we have $1.3 million. That concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer questions that folks may have regarding the financial report.
Thank you, Artis. We appreciate it very much. Does anybody have any questions for Artis?
This is Gideon Dunkley. I do have a question for Artis. Artis, my question is, how are the providers faring during this COVID-19 pandemic? Are they all back at work? Are they providing services? What is the status, basically?
I think Mike is best placed to answer that. He and his team are more directly in touch with the providers.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah,
We seem to have lost you, Mike.
and we'll have a report. Say again?
Zoned out for a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
The video is not working for some reason. I don't know what that is. We will do a presentation a little bit later on to go over the year in review. But the short answer for now, till we get to that presentation, is over the course of the spring, programs shifted to providing adapted services and working virtually. And I can say more and editorialize a little bit in further detail when we get to that presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much. I have one more question. My question is to Artis. How does the budget look going forward, presuming that we have a new administration in Washington?
You're only asking hard questions tonight.
Well, it's not an easy job. You know, you're not there to look pretty, but you're there to provide us with information as a board member. Thank you.
Sure.
This is Mike. I'll take that too. So we don't have any details about that yet, but I think the latest information that we have, folks in External Affairs study what's happening down in DC. So most recently, there was a continuing resolution for the government to operate through December. So we can only wildly speculate thereafter what will happen in change of administration. One would like to think that under a Biden administration, there'd be some interest in, rather than continuing to pass continuing resolutions, actually passing a new CSBG Act. And David Bradley, who is the chair of the National Community Action Foundation, is the lobbying force for CSBG, and he has tried to appeal to the legislature at some point in time when they get around to reauthorizing CSBG to increase overall funding. But who knows what will happen? And frankly, that matter is not just a matter of the executive branch. We will all be paying attention to what happens in the Georgia Senate runoff elections to see who will control the Senate. And maybe when we know who controls the Senate, we'll have a better sense of what the agenda might look like at the federal level. But, you know, at this point in time, there's no concrete discussion about what HHS's priorities will be in the next administration. We don't know who the secretary under HHS will be until the administration is underway, which won't be until the swearing in oath of office January 20th. So, you know, when we do know more, we will certainly share it, but it's it would only be wild speculation as to what might happen right now.
Okay, but you have a timeline, correct?
Well, assuming that the country continues to have a smooth transition of power, there'll be a swearing in of the next president January 20th. And then one presumes that that president will make appointments, which would include a secretary for HHS, and that administration would look to pass a federal budget. But the federal fiscal year there would be, where's 21 to the federal 2022 administration. So it might be some time before there's any formal proclamations from DC about how they're prioritizing CSBG. So we wouldn't have any new information, I wouldn't think, at the January meeting, just as we don't have any concrete information now. But perhaps after the swearing in, after the January meeting, maybe at our following meeting. And, Anita, remind me when we get closer, we can have Sarah Marks come to the spring meeting so we can talk about, what the more, what will then be the more recent speculation is about the federal funding climate. Yeah. But I don't see our really knowing anything concretely now. I can also speculate there's been some discussion about a second CARES Act. But the most recent I heard, which I won't even call news, I'll just say things that I'm seeing in passing, was that the legislature wasn't sure they were going to be able to push that through by the end of the term, and they thought they might have to wait for a Biden administration to get that passed too. If that changes, we'll certainly let you know. But we didn't even plan to put this in the commissioner's report, frankly, because there wasn't any concrete news.
Thank you, Mike.
And I just also want to point out that in the last,
appreciate that.
I also just wanted to add, Mike, that we have not received a cut to CSBG over the last 4 years. We've received small increases. That's just for information for the CAB members.
Thank you. Anita, did any other people join us?
We just had Victoria Camarada Couto joined us. Hello, Victoria. So, Greg, you can mark her on the roll call.
I tried to call in. It didn't work. I left some messages with some phone numbers. And this is my DOE account I'm using for Microsoft Teams.
Okay. Oh, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And do we officially have a quorum now?
No, we need one more person.
Okay. Artist, thank you for the report. Does anybody else have any further questions? I will now ask Mike Bobbitt to be gracious enough to give us the commissioner's report.
Thank you again, Chair. And again, sorry my video is being wonky, but I can see most of you, so it's a pleasure to see you, and thank you for this opportunity to update you. So one of the I'm going to try to move through a lot of stuff, but I recognize the time, so I don't want to get too enamored of the details, but we do have a few updates that I think would be of interest to the board. So I want to share that. So one of the issues I'm sure on some members' minds is learning labs. So when we last met, both at the executive session and the last full board session, we apprised you that the city came to recognize childcare that supports children in a hybrid school model was an acute priority. And so subsequent to that, the city, both DYCD and ACS and the DOE, has been rolling out the Learning Bridges model. So an important part of the Learning Bridges model, as we reported last time, is Learning Labs. Learning Labs, overseen by DYCD, is providing a safe and no-cost childcare for kindergarten through grades 8 when children are not in school. So as many of you may have heard, as of today, all DOE schools will operate remotely. However, learning labs will remain open to continue to offer critical childcare to families with children's K through 8. Where possible, programs may increase times and days of attendance to students. As a side note, because of today's information, our other conventional programs, after school, such as Beacon programs, Cornerstone programs, NDA high school programs, must now operate 100% virtually. Some are contemplating hybrid, or in the case of NDA high school, if the schools were open, the counselor advocates were doing in-person, beginning to do in-person appointments with their students. But with the DOE shutdown, we have advised all programs to operate virtually. DOICD is still negotiating with the Department of State and providing clarifications about this model. As this group may recall, we are receiving about $45 million in CSBG CARES Act funding, which would be one of a couple of funding streams that would be used to fund this model. So we're still continuing to clarify what's in the model, how the programs operate in our discussions with the Department of State. We are not alone. I've come to realize there are a number of other community action agencies in the state that still have not finalized their CARES plans or received their CARES contracts, but we are hoping to process this and move this forward as soon as we can. The city is committed to meeting families' child care needs for capacity up to 100,000 seats. Learning Labs launched last month. There are currently 266 programs in operation with 16,000 funded seats and the capacity to serve more than 33,000 students. And the information I'm sharing now was reviewed with the City Council as well. My colleague, Deputy Commissioner Susan Haskell, delivered a similar presentation. DYCD has matched approximately 40,000 families so far to a Learning Lab site and officially enrolled about 10,000. So we're continuing to enroll and anticipate adapting to the circumstances on the ground. As I mentioned, it was just today that the DOE schools closed down. So that's Learning Labs. With regard to PPE, the agency has been actively involved making sure programs have PPE if they need it. As I mentioned, our programs have adapted to virtually, but some of the programs over the course of the summer and the fall began to open back up. So in September, CSBG funded programs received about 150 cases of masks, 56 cases of gloves, 138 thermometers, 265 cases of hand sanitizer. And this month, the NABs and the discretionary programs, the City Council funded programs that we administer, will also receive PPE, and Anita and her team are following up with the NABs on the details of that distribution plan. The New York State Community Action Association typically would hold an economic symposium in March. We're well past March, so as this group realizes that didn't happen, their initial plan was to augment a professional development conference they would typically hold in June, but due to the pandemic, the June conference was pushed back to December. And so December 1st and 3rd, they will hold their annual conference, which they're calling Reconnect and Recharge. We are currently exploring whether in the way that we used to be able to make the bus available for a limited number of CAB and NAB members to attend the symposium, if we can assure some virtual registrations for this conference. So if you are interested after the meeting, please let Anita know. I don't yet know the total number of slots that can be made available. And it's something that Artis and I are jointly looking into. And it isn't just a question of arranging the finances for it. It's also liaising with our sister agencies because of the overall pandemic and the tight budget we really have to justify when we're making significant expenditures, especially atypical expenditures. And, in our minds, moving from the bus to this may not seem like a big deal, but I can understand how it has to be reviewed. The NDA RFP we've talked about at many points in time, so just want to give you a quick update. The procurement unit, our program unit in NAB and program integration evaluation teams met with the Mayor's Office of Contract Services to finalize this release, which, as this group may recall from the prior notes, was expected to be released actually next week. However, the procurement is going to move through the city's new procurement system, which is called Passport. And so there's some reformatting that is taking place. It's out of DYCD's hands. We've handed everything over to Mayor's Office of Contract Services, but the resultant administrative processes now mean that the RFP will come out sometime in December rather than November. So hopefully by the time we get to the next CAB meeting, we'll be able to let you know that it actually is out there. And when it is formally released, we will update you electronically. The evaluator questionnaire with the new timeline will be distributed to CAB and NAB members so that we can revisit availability to read proposals. This is a big deal, and we want a lot of external readers to really pay attention and see the fruits of their labor from having done the 2019 Community Needs Assessment. External readers would also need to receive training on the use of Passport. Because this is an online system, we want to make sure that our external readers have an understanding and comfort with reading in this kind of virtual format rather than passing around sheets and sheaves of paper as we've done in the past. Wanted to let the board know briefly about the Civic Engagement Commission. Earlier this month, DYC hosted an informational session for all staff, so that's CSBG, but all program areas as well, to assist in the promotion of the Civic Engagement Commission's Youth Participatory Budgeting Initiative. So if you're not familiar with this initiative, it seeks to generate ideas from young people on how to spend $100,000. The funding would be awarded to 5 community-based organizations at $20,000 each, who each develop projects based on the youth's ideas. And those projects are selected by a vote. If CAB members are interested in helping to spread the word about this, I want to give a shout out to the Queensborough President's Office. I know Susie Tannenbaum is one of the CAB members who already has been trumpeting this initiative. Please let Anita know, and we will forward the information. And finally, an update on NABs. And Anita, if I miss anything here, you can chime in. But NABs have been meeting on schedule all throughout the quarantine, conducting their meetings virtually, and are just now completing their officer elections. Training for NAB officers is being planned for January, and I know development of the board members is something that with our current leadership on the board, I know you're very interested in, so you'll be pleased to know that's moving forward in January. 20 NAB members have reached the, was there a question? I'm sorry.
White counter. You can do white counter. White cabinet.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that's a question or if there's crosstalk.
Figure out some fireplace to go. If I mean.
Remind folks to mute, please. I think that was probably.
Please mute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. 20 NAB members have reached the end of their membership term and will be honored at next June's CAB meeting. With regards to recruitment, collaboration with DYC's youth town halls to encourage NAB youth membership is a civic engagement strategy that we've been employing. And if any of you have sat in on a bit of any of the youth town halls, it's really been fantastic. That might be a topic that we can bring to a future CAB meeting to summarize kind of how that's been going, how we've been virtually engaging across the city. And we're continuing to target local elected officials for NAB member referrals for those seats where we're looking for the EPOs to refer. An important initiative that I think I've mentioned in the past, which I want to give more vocal, not just support, but emphasis and attention to, is encouraging NAB members to recruit from all parts of their neighborhood development area. And so this supports things that we observed and try to champion, certainly in the last community needs assessment, where we're using the geography of the neighborhood tabulation areas. We want to make sure every requisite part of a neighborhood is covered when we're doing our needs assessments. And so the liaisons are also looking at and having conversation with the NAB members themselves about representation and if the breadth of each neighborhood is reflected in terms of who is volunteering to serve on an NAB. We're also having internal conversations about developing, as a part of the board development process, strategy, discussions about equity and representation. So we know that there are different racial and ethnic components that comprise each of the NDAs, and we want to make sure that our board members are actively aware of and connected to and intentional about conducting outreach on an ongoing basis to all parts of the neighborhood. So I think that's going to be a lift over time. We're happy to be reporting about this now and what we're planning, and we'll keep you apprised of how that's going. So, you know, to wrap this up, to say that 2020 has been difficult would certainly be an understatement among all understatements. However, the staff, the providers, the volunteers of the NAB members, certainly all of you have persevered, pivoted, adapted in all kind of crazy and inventive and really helpful ways, and remain steadfastly present as we work towards better days. So, you know, on behalf of our team, I do want to wish a very happy Thanksgiving, a happy holidays. We won't meet again until the new year, so happy holidays and a happy new year to all. And that concludes the commissioner's report.
Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions on the commissioner's report?
I would like.
Hello? Could you hear me? This is Jackie. Could you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Jackie.
Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I heard, so I guess offline, I would have Anita for mass. I didn't understand. The organizations get mass if we need mass.
If we have any additional masks, we can bring them to you. But we have to see what we have. It's limited.
Okay.
So it's the NABs that are going to get, because
Okay, so
many of the NABs will be doing events in their community and giving out masks.
okay.
So
we'll see.
Board
Okay,
12, Board 12 may do that, and Board 9 also.
Okay. So what about 10? Well, what happens is, because we have a organization in Harlem, and we've been giving out masks and food. We've been getting masks from the DA office and from the police department. So we are always looking for masks.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, were you giving them out to organizations?
The agency is giving them out to the providers that we have contracts with. DYCD.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
DYCD, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to you.
Okay,
Because
great.
I do have a contract. I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Susie, it seemed like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. I wanted to, first of all, say thank you to Mike for the very informative presentation. And I wanted to pick up on one thing, and that is recruitment of new NAB members and filling vacancies. I work for Borough President Sharon Lee, and right now we have a number of vacancies. And I just want to ask whether either at this meeting in the future or at a committee meeting, we could maybe have a conversation about best practices and strategies for identifying potential NAB members. The reason I'm bringing this up is often we identify very promising candidates, and then it turns out they live right outside the NDA, and therefore they are ineligible. So I would be very interested to hear from other CAB members what their strategies are for, as Mike said, achieving equity and representation, really finding diverse candidates who also live in the actual NDA. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. I welcome that, and some of our initial thinking is that this is a thread of discussion that should live in a very robust way in your strategic partnership committee meetings. So if this could be a topic raised at the next meeting, I'll make sure that I am present, and any CAB members who would like to join that discussion. And I think what you pointed to shows there's some degree of nuance around this. I think geographic representation matters. You have to be from the neighborhood in order to be seated. And then when we look at the constituent parts of each neighborhood, it would be ideal if we had several persons from different parts of the neighborhood who are seated. And then when you look at the race and ethnicity of the constituent members, that would also be good. So I'm really looking, and I say the staff is also looking for the CAB's endorsement and support of this, because I think some of this is training, but I think other of it is sending the right signals of encouragement, and I'm avoiding the use of or some thought of quotas. That's not the kind of conversation that I think we're looking to advance. I think we're trying to advance thoughtful discussion about equity and representation in the interest of making sure the communities, which ultimately are going to be served by the program, are being reached at every step of the way. Those folks in 2022 need to say whatever the needs of the next needs assessment will be, in the interest of making sure that they will receive those services. So this is a longer term lift. I say all this with a grain of salt because I know I say it in the meeting, but Anita knows between the meetings when we're looking at vacancies that there's going to be, well, how soon are you going to fill all those boards? So we want the boards to be full, but we want the boards to be full in ways that reflect the community and are helpful for them as allies to DYCD. So we want to do it the right way. And I think, Itchy and Greg know this because we've talked about this, a bit actively. We want to do this in the right way. And I think bringing the community right along with us, and you are the community, certainly in this regard, is the way for us to do it, doing it together.
Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, hi, this is Gideon Dunkley again. Could you elaborate a little on the rollout for the training for the proposal reading and how it will be scored since it will be online?
Anita, do you want to take that or do you want me to?
It's going to be scored, I imagine, because I haven't seen what it looks like this year, the same way it was the last time around. And then it's just that it'll be online instead of, it was pretty much online last time too, because it was given to some members by disc. So I think it'll be pretty much the same way. There'll be sections, and each one will have a top rating, and you can give it from 0 to that top rating. So I think it'll be the same. At the training, all of that information will be given exhaustively to make sure our readers understand what is needed and what they have to do.
Anita, thank you. Do you have a schedule for the training?
Not yet, because the RFP has not been released. It was supposed to be released on Monday, but now today I heard that it's going to be released in December. So until we have a definite date when the RFP is going to be released, or until it is released, we cannot give you dates for the training or for the time of reading or for the conferencing afterwards. It all depends on what day that RFP is released. So as soon as we have the information, you will have the information.
And the training will be done on Zoom or some other platform.
Yeah, if we're still quarantined. If we're not quarantined, then it might be in person, but we'll have to see, or it might be a combination of both. We have to take it day by day because we're in this situation now. But as I said, you're going to know as soon as I know. I'm going to send out a questionnaire to everyone to see who's available to read.
Thank you, Anita. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Gideon.
Moving along.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum now, so we can have those votes.
Okay. So we'll move along. I appreciate everybody who joined, even though it's late. We hope in the future everybody joins us more promptly. I assume everybody had a chance to review the minutes of the previous CAB meeting. Does anybody have any questions on the minutes of the CAB meeting of September 10th? Okay. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept the minutes for the CAB meeting.
Motion, Jackie Rowe Adams.
Jackie Rowe
So
Adams.
moved.
So moved. Thank you.
Dunkley. Second by second by Gideon?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Gideon. All those in
You're
favor.
welcome, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any nays? Do we have anybody abstaining? Let it reflect that we voted to accept the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you. We heard a little while ago from Artis her quarterly report, and we thank her for it. And now I'm going to entertain a motion to accept that report.
Motion Christian to accept
Rodriguez.
Artis's report.
So moved. Second, Gideon Dunkley.
Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the report, say aye.
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 Do we have any nays? Do we have anybody abstaining? Let it reflect we accepted the financial program quarterly report. Thank you. Then we heard from Mike, as he always does so professionally and eloquently. He gave the commissioner's report. I would like to entertain a motion to accept the commissioner's report.
So moved, Gideon Dunkley.
Seconded by
Second by Ariel Sabansky.
Ariel, thank you. All those in favor of accepting the commissioner's report, please say aye.
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 Do we have any nays? Anybody abstaining? Thank you. We accepted the commissioner's report. Moving on. The committee met on October 29th to review the agenda from tonight's meeting and heard from Mike about the commissioner's report and also the committee reports from the Governance, Program, and Strategic Partnership Committee. Before I ask the chairs of those committees to go ahead with the report, I saw Ariel mentioned on a message where people should join in, that committee meeting. In general, we're looking for our distinguished members of the CAB to join the committees. That we would like for the members to take a more active role in the governance program and the strategic partnership committee. If you join those meetings, you'll see the outstanding work that Linda, Tamika, and Ariel do, and I think you would enjoy being part of it. So if you can reach out to Anita and discuss joining those committees, it would be very much appreciated. I will now ask, did Linda join us?
I don't think so. I think she's not here today. She had a family emergency during the week, so I don't think she could make it today. But I can do the report for her.
Please go ahead, Anita.
So the governance committee met on Wednesday, October 28th, and they had an update on the elections, the CAB elections, CAB seat elections and vacancies. In the public sector, we have actually now 2 mayoral appointees seats that are open. So we're working with our external relations unit to see if we can get those seats filled. We also have 3 vacancies on the regional seats, which is from the low-income sector. Region 5, which covers NDA Bronx 9. Region 7, which covers NDA Manhattan 3. And Region 17, which covers NDA Queens 3, 4, and 7. So the Region 17 election will be underway as of Monday. We do have a candidate, Mr. Paul Mai, who joined the meeting. He's from NAB Queen 7. So we hope he will be elected by the next CAB meeting in January. And then we had a report on the NDA 2020, which was about the request for proposals, which was scheduled, as I said before, on November 23rd, which is next Monday, but it's been moved back again to December. So once again, as soon as that RFP is released, the CAB and NAB members who volunteered to be evaluators or who wish to be evaluators now will get a questionnaire and be surveyed if they can make the dates and do the reading. We will have them participate. And another report on DYCD during the pandemic. Most of the program providers are delivering service remotely or by telephone and in limited in-person visits. Program staff continues to meet with the providers on a biweekly basis to monitor services. So then that's the governance committee report today.
Anita, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll now ask the chairperson of the program committee, Tamika Robertson, to give her report. Tamika?
Yes. We met on October 21st. Sorry, guys. So it was Wednesday, October 21st. And you can check the board packet, which includes more information. So we had a presentation on the NDA Seniors Program and during the COVID-19, and we had 2 presenters headed off by Michael Glasgow, who's the NDA contract manager, who introduced the 2 presenters. He informed the committee of the commitment that providers are adhering to regarding the NDA Seniors Programs during these difficult times. Presenting were two providers from Grand Street Settlement and Conscientious Musical Reviews. And we started with, he introduced Carrie Chen of the Grand Street Settlement, where she explained the language barrier is the biggest problem and their seniors face in the program because they speak Chinese or Spanish. Also, many seniors are financially insecure. As COVID-19 has forced regular programming to cease earlier in the spring, program staff was able to maintain contact with participants by telephone, and the staff was trained on online systems to support seniors remotely. The focus then was shifted to self-care for the seniors. Grand Street Settlement Services and access services provided by DYCD's Capricorn system. The focus is now to keep up with seniors by tablets that were donated to the organization, hot meal drop-offs, and food pantry pickups. Word of mouth about the programs has increased the membership. So that was the Grand Street Settlement presentation done by Carrie Chen. And then Mr. Glasgow announced Valencia Emmanuel of Conscientious Music Review, and she spoke about the presentation for seniors in the organization's various programs, because they have a few programs going on throughout the city, to online programs. Conscientious Musical Reviews provides concerts, Zoom dancing, and drama classes, which is really exciting. She went into, she gave great examples on the different programs that they offer. The organization is starting a Zoom technology class as well. For seniors who do not want to be physically seen, you can also, they have the ability to call in. And currently, Conscientious Musical Reviews is working on expanding new programming for the Zoom. So they are expanding their Zoom program, which is great, because we're still in, we still have a lot of restrictions. So the fact that they're still moving on with the Zoom program and expanding it and making it better and more accessible to more of the seniors who are part of the program is really great. Upcoming programmings include the continuation of concerts and more interactive programming for members. Their information is attached to the committee minutes, which is also found in the board packet. And I encourage anyone who has seniors in any of those areas to reach out to those two organizations, because they gave their presentations were excellent. The programs that they have, they put a lot of time and energy into their programs. So if you're in the Manhattan area, Grand Street area, which is all far down south in Manhattan, near the South Street Seaport area, and then also Conscientious, I can't never say that word correctly, but Musical Review is another great organization. But like I said, which is noted in our minutes, if you look in the packet and you look them up, those are excellent organizations for seniors, and they are currently operating throughout the situation that we're in now with COVID-19. So we had old business. We had no old business, actually. We had new business, in which Brenda Temple mentioned seniors in the Rockaways were provided with Access-a-Ride to poll sites for early voting. And they also arranged the ability for seniors not to have to wait in line, which is, a stress on them. And if possible, to get into the poll sites promptly. So Ms. Temple encouraged everyone to vote, which I'm assuming we already know how that went. And I hope everybody had the opportunity to participate, because voting is very important to all of those who take it seriously. So, and that ended our committee. And I just want to encourage everyone, once again, the program committee is an excellent way. It's a vibrant way. It's a way for you to learn about the programs in your neighborhood or in neighborhoods around you. So I would encourage everyone on this call, and reach out to other NAB members and other members of the public to join us on each and every call. We love the participation. We love to see our numbers grow as people hear about the services that DYCD provides to the communities. And I'm hoping that, the next call that we have, because it's done quarterly, I'm hoping that the next time, we're going to have so many people, but just limit your questions because it is done in a timely way. So, and that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Tamika? Okay. I neglected to call for a vote on the governance committee report, so we'll do that afterwards. Right now, I'll entertain a motion to accept the program committee report.
So moved, Greg Hamburg.
Greg, second by?
Second by Ariel.
Ariel, thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Anyone abstaining? So moved and accepted. Going back to the governance committee report that Anita reported to us, I'll entertain a motion to accept that report.
Christian Rodriguez, so moved.
Christian Rodriguez, second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone in the nays? Anyone abstaining? So moved and accepted. Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to ask Ariel Savransky to present her report from the Strategic Partnerships Committee.
Great. So we met on October 22nd, and I actually want to thank Mike and Anita for making my job really easy because we basically touched on, between Mike's update on the CSBG funding and Anita's update on the governance committee, we touched on the things that we spoke about. So just really quickly, we had an update on the NAB recruitment and membership, which Anita spoke about in detail earlier. We spoke a lot about the NAB youth contingent, which Mike brought up with this new town hall model. I think it sounds like a really interesting way to engage youth on issues that are really important to them during this really stressful time. We also talked about how to further engage youth in foster care in this process. And then also to encourage the youth who are participating in this town hall model to join the NAB and to participate potentially in the NDA RFP reading process, because then that really gives them the ability to decide where funding is going in their communities. We talked about the RFP process. As Anita mentioned, it's now going to be in December, and there will be opportunities for CAB and NAB members to read the proposals. We talked about the NDA programs and how they've all, or most of the programs, have been able to operate during the pandemic, which Mike gave a great update on, and it's really amazing the work that DYCD programs have been able to do during this time. And then no old business, but we did get an update from Anita about the Situation Room and the how DYCD handles kind of day-to-day things that come up related to COVID symptoms in learning labs and schools. And that is it.
Thank you, Ariel. Any questions for Ariel? Okay. We'll now entertain a motion to accept the minutes from and the report from the Strategic Partnership Committee.
Gideon Dunkley, so move.
Second, then,
Tamika Robinson.
Tamika, thank you. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposing, say nay. Those abstaining, so moved. Thank you very much. We'll now ask Mike Bobbitt, where on the agenda paper it says acting deputy commissioner. I really hope by the next board meeting the word acting will disappear. Doing the outstanding work that he does, he certainly should be made deputy commissioner. And I'm sure that everybody on this board feels the same way. I'll now ask Mike Bobbitt to give the annual report on the CSBG funding and programs.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the kind sentiment. I don't, I am happy to serve at the agency's pleasure and to work with the CS. I'm going to try to share my screen, which I think will work, despite the fact that the what do you call it? The screen itself is not working. So let me. Oh, wrong button. Bear with me one moment. Do you see my screen?
No,
Yes.
Yeah, now we do.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. I recognize the time, and I think this will actually be a fairly brief presentation. So I can skip some of the preliminaries on the slides. I think we know where we are assembled, and I think this group at this point knows the history of CSBG, kind of bring us to the current moment. Our focus tonight is on the current federal fiscal year 2020. And as I've reported the past few years, thankfully the Department of State allows us to use the city fiscal year so that you can get an accurate picture of, from start to finish, of the operations of the portfolio. So what I will say in terms of an overall trend, overall observation, the city, like the rest of the world, was greatly impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. And so I think in anticipation of this meeting, folks are wondering and getting asked the question, how are the programs operating and how do the programs do? So, one, in the middle of the year, depending on how you slice it, when the information came out, which I gather, depending on what facts we're looking at, somewhere between January and March, we knew we would be set and beleaguered with a very serious pandemic and a health crisis. And sometime thereafter in March, we started adapting and suspending our on-person monitoring of site visits, our staff moving to a virtual model, encouraging the providers to do the same thing. And, they in turn being as creative, adaptive as they could be to try to retain existing clients and try to pursue the outcomes that they had contractually agreed to do. So, keep that in mind as we go through what actually took place, the portfolio and what happened. So I will say that programs in, I forget how to pronounce this, if it's Herculean or Herculean or whatever, but, for programs to have reached between 80 or 100% of their targets, considering the pandemic, is something that I find remarkable. So, bear in mind, our high school portfolio principally works in schools. There are some center-based programs, but that's a minority. So they were able to recruit in the fall before the pandemic struck. but you see their enrollment is actually a little bit ahead of their projection. To have 91% of their academic targets working from the spring and the summer, I find that to be incredible. For our Opportunity Youth programs, this is a 2-cohort model. So the fall cohort was not greatly affected by the pandemic, but as you can imagine, the spring cohort, it's hard to put young people in part-time supportive employment if work sites have shut down. And so DYCD staff worked collaboratively with the New York City Census to create virtual jobs. So some of you may have volunteered and done phone banking to help promote the census through the deadline. We actually recreated some of those volunteer positions as paid positions for young people. But the whole model is largely disrupted because you have to have adults and young people shadowing them in work situations. So in terms of meeting that outcome of job readiness, that was just impacted by the pandemic. I don't think that's a surprise. In terms of our NDA adult portfolio, the housing program, as I reported in prior years, was already being impacted by some larger citywide trends under the de Blasio, and these are good things too, under the de Blasio administration and with the city council's coordination and support, making a lot of free legal services available, and some of the talent from our provider portfolio moving to those new programs. It had an impact on the housing portfolio, and I've mentioned this to you when we were talking about new program areas as to why eventually we're going to retire the NDA housing program. So that coupled with the pandemic was not a banner year for this program, but still trying to work in a virtual environment, they did have some measure of success in terms of enrollment, retention, and outcomes. By contrast, the Healthy Families model, which is a much more wide-ranging model, it's not limited to one, although housing is an important issue, it's not limited to one issue. Families, individuals can be coming in seeking any kind of social services or government benefits. Even in the face of the pandemic, you see they did remarkably well, both in terms of enrollment and in terms of their outcomes. So a lot of that was pursuing getting clients referred, and you can imagine as big as the pandemic was in terms of the health crisis, all the other needs were still as present. So kudos to them for their efficacy in this tough time. The seniors programs were reported on earlier in the programmatic presentation. You see their enrollment was actually pretty good for the year, and their outcomes are just fine. So in some of the same ways that the Healthy Families portfolio was still able to adapt readily to virtual services, so the seniors programs that did access to benefits and services did. And to the extent that it was safe for seniors to be together, and then in cases where it wasn't, where instead programs were creating Zoom meetings to do, exercise or whatever that they were trying to do to keep seniors from being isolated, those programs did quite well. The adult literacy program had some impact. The enrollment was fine, as you see, and the actual gains did quite well. There's a little bit of the disruption, obviously the pandemic, for all programs. And that's my chief. That is going to be my chief reason why I'm explaining problems with performance. Classes were disrupted, tests were disrupted, and I'll say more about that a little bit later on with the other programs. Immigrant Services portfolio. NDA Immigrant Services actually had a pretty good year overall. So that's another one where I would say attaboy, attagirl to those teams to be able to adapt their services related to the pandemic. The Comprehensive Services for Immigrant Families did well with their enrollment targets, and the staff wanted me to pass along to you. With regard to the self-advocacy, one of the insights the staff has had is every program under the portfolio might have their own definition, given broad guidance, but their own definition as to what self-advocacy means for a family. And so what some of the programs have begun to pilot is pre and post tests when they deliver their workshops, their self-efficacy workshops for families. Like, how are people, when they engage in these workshops, retaining this information so that they can put it into practice? So that's something that we want to monitor next year to see if there's an uptick in that measurement. With regard to the CSBG funded immigrant legal services legal services programs, they were all impacted by two major factors. The pandemic, as I've mentioned, and again, that's my chief response for a lot of this. But if you will recall last year's presentation, the Trump administration has, and some of the resulting policies and the slowness to respond and for things to be kind of mired in different legal systems has had an impact, which we've shared certainly since last year's presentation. I believe in the year before his presentation, it's had a chilling effect on immigrants with status issues. So some people who might otherwise want to present themselves for services delivery are afraid to come forward. Now, certainly the city of New York has protested some of these issues and some of these stances from the federal government, but we still have to contend with that chilling environment. And with regard to the slowdown, as was also reported last year, it just takes a lot longer because of deliberate, obfuscation and delay, it would seem, from the federal government for cases to move forward when clients are brave enough to want to try to pursue them. So that really explains both how enrollment has suffered and our outcomes have suffered for this portfolio. So that's what you see here is immigrant legal services and immigrant legal services for youth. When we look at the other two portfolios that HRA is overseeing, you see some of that chilling effect for the immigrant DV population, and their outcome is actually remarkably high. And so we talked to the HRA staff about that, and there's been a subtle shift in some of the clients that are being recruited, because it's immigrant populations who are domestic violence survivors. But I think where they are finding success is survivors who are maybe a little bit further in their journey as survivors rather than immediate DV disputes. And so the presumption that the victim is not safe, if you're working with survivors you've known for a while, you're able to pursue other types of government benefits and services, given that at that point the victim has found a safe environment. And so even under this pandemic, many of their clients have been able to operate virtually in the same way that healthy families I report on the seniors programs are able to access benefits and services. And, there's been widespread disruption to the workforce, but the Immigrant Legal Services Immigrant Workers Program has performed pretty well overall, considering that. Adolescent literacy. So I've never presented a number like this to the board before. And so you're probably looking at the top of the screen and you're seeing a 0. And when I first saw the 0, I freaked out for a minute too. But as our immigrant and literacy programs services pointed out, pandemic came and the test that's used to measure progress was suspended. So if you have no method of measurement, there's nothing to measure. So, this is what the pandemic hath wrought on the city of New York. You can't have any outcomes if there's no measurement for the outcome. So that's really why that has happened. And it's disruptive, and I hope as we get past the pandemic, there'll be another point in time where we can go back to some of these things. But it is what it is, as they say. You see, the adult literacy English as a second language program actually exceeded its enrollment target and did quite well with its outcomes. So again, kudos to that portfolio of providers and that team for adapting under these circumstances. Fatherhood Initiative had a great year, actually, overall, meeting their enrollment targets, meeting their enrollment targets and their outcome targets. I sat in on the fatherhood provider meeting earlier today, and there was some great discussion about some potentialities from that work. So the measurement that we share with you is based on self-reported progress of the dads who've been in the program for 3 months or longer. And there's a facilitated interview we call a survey. But what we've been talking to them about is when some dads stay in the program for longer periods of time, continuing to do that survey. So I hope in the ensuing years we'll be able to understand more and share more about the impact when dads have wanted and needed to be in the program longer. But in terms of last year, they actually did quite well. So I want to flag for you the scale because if you look at summer youth employment, it looks like something's off. But if you look at the legend at the very bottom, these are really de minimis numbers. We just wanted to show the gradation. So in terms of the projected enrollment, CSBG, which again is just a sliver of all of SYP, but was projected to cover 1,557 slots and covered 1,472. So that is 95% of the target. We did expect it would fall in line, and it does. And in terms of those young people getting valuable work experience, they made that target. This is 100% of that target. So I want to go to I want to get to like kind of the happiest part of this this story, which is TA. But first, the family development credential. We've presented on this program committee has seen kind of what happens under the hood. They had another great year, as expected, meeting both their enrollment and their outcome targets. But I'd say the big news and the walk away for the board today is technical assistance. So in the middle of the year, just as we had to adapt and providers had to adapt, the providers under this portfolio had to adapt. So typically workshops would have been held in person. And so when it's not safe and you're trying to discourage that kind of activity, our teams in capacity building said, hey, can you shift to providing virtual workshops? And boy, did they ever. So you look at these numbers. These are, I can't wait. You know, I'm glad that Amy's listening to this to share this with the state. By the end of the year, we're projected, which we would have done in a prior year through workshops, to reach, you know, about 2,400 or so folks, 11,000 applicants, and they got skills gain. You say about 1,300 people would say, you know, this was a very useful activity I'm bringing into my work, and nearly 6,000 people report that. So that's explosive growth. I don't pretend to know past pandemic whether there'll be a permanent shift, but certainly during the pandemic, this has been great. It's been all hands on deck, not just in my portfolio, CSBG, but the whole agency really continuing to trumpet these kind of learning opportunities and ways that we can strengthen the saw for our providers, because we're relying on our providers to do this work. So as you can imagine, the corollary to that, we didn't do 80 in-depth in-person trainings because, again, the environment hasn't been safe. So that number stayed at 23 as part of that shift. But I don't mind trading an 83 for a 23 in the interest of going from 2,400 to 11,000. And so that is that's my last slide. It's not advancing. There you go. Yeah. So that concludes this this report. Actually, one thing to conclude this report. Last year, the pandemic struck in the middle of the city fiscal year, in the middle of most of the program's operations. So I, will dutifully present next November, but given where we are in November, I am, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm concerned, the staff are concerned. We're providing a lot of technical assistance. We are continuing to have those coaching conversations that was reported in your committee meetings with providers, but enrollment targets are not where we would like to see them. And that's across the board. So, I'm sharing this now because I don't want a later board meeting for you to think that we're not trying to do everything that we can, or think for a minute the providers are not trying to do everything they can, but recognize the environment that we're in. People are anxious. People are fearful. People are all over the place in terms of how to do these things safely. And I think even adapting to doing things virtually, some people are just burnt out. We're doing a Teams meeting right now. There's a lot of Teams meetings. There's a lot of WebEx meetings, and I can see how it's tough for providers and clients to engage and to retain people. So we will keep coaching. We will keep trying to provide both concrete support and facilitate conversations among them to do team support. And I'm really appreciative of how well it went, all things considered. So that concludes my report. I'll give back the screen if my buttons would behave, and I'm certainly available for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mike? Mike, on behalf of everybody, we thank you and the rest of the staff at DYCD for the outstanding job you're doing, especially during this difficult and trying time. So thank you very, very much. Before we move on to old business, I would like to ask if Amy Kohler would like to say something.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, actually, I would. And I'll sound nervous because I'm really not good at doing this. But before I came to the state, I worked 10 years at a community action agency. 7 of those years were on the front line, but never faced anything that we're going through right now. So I just want to thank you guys for your dedication and, keeping DYCD strong. And, it makes me proud that I can be your analyst and know that you guys are doing everything you can. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Mr. Chairman, we need a vote on Mike's presentation for the audits to the Department of State.
Very good. Thank you.
Dot the i's, yes.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the annual report.
Gideon Dunkley, so moved.
Seconded by
Second by Ariel Spransky.
Ariel. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Those abstaining? So moved. We accepted the annual report on the CSBG funding and programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me take this opportunity, since you recognized Amy and had her say something. We continue to enjoy a very productive, a very warm relationship with the Department of State, and that is no small thanks to Amy Kohler. She's been a great program analyst. She's very helpful. She proved herself to be a quick study when the portfolio is handed over to us. I know I've seen sometimes the analysts get nervous because we're like the biggest CSBG awardee of the bunch, as you can imagine. But Amy has dove right in. She's very helpful. She helps. How can I say this most tactfully? The director of her office has his attention split on a million different things too, and Amy's been a great ally in terms of when things have needed the attention of the entire division on her end. And so I continue to look forward. Maybe I shouldn't have said it, but it's too late. I've already said it. To having a very favorable relationship. Anyone who's been here any length of time knows the fact pattern that Anita and I inherited a long time ago wasn't as warm, wasn't as productive as the period we've enjoyed. And so we want to continue that as long as we can continue that. I'm very thankful that we have Amy, just like I'm thankful we have this quality of board engagement and the folks who are on this meeting, this call right now. Things are moving forward well and understandably and coherently, even when we need to adapt, because people who care and people who pay attention are right in there with us. So, thanks to Amy and thanks to all of you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the board, we thank you, Amy, for everything you do. God bless you. Thank you. Moving on to old business. It is vitally important for us to function as the board to have a quorum. And that being said, it is important we should be able to have a quorum in the beginning of our meetings in order to conduct the board meeting properly and efficiently. So it's incumbent on everybody to please do your best to, our next meeting is on January 28th. We want to start on time, have a quorum on time. People have busy schedules, and I recognize that. But for the people who make it their business to be here on time, for them to have to waste their precious time is not fair. So I'm asking all of you to do your utmost that we should have a quorum on time and conduct these meetings properly. Any new business? Anita?
No, I don't have any new business right now.
Okay,
I
Mike,
would
any,
like to, may I?
go
An
ahead.
announcement?
Please.
Go ahead, Sus.
I would, if I may, I would like to just mention one thing, and that is, we all know that in October, the 2020 census ended. The deadline moved around multiple times. I just want to congratulate everybody in the CAB who worked to help their neighbors to get counted in the census. We all know how important that civic engagement project was. Borough President Lee had a Queens Complete Count Committee, which I coordinated together with my assistant. We worked with some wonderful community partners and with the Census Bureau and NYC Census 2020. Everybody worked so hard under such challenging circumstances between the pandemic and the original threat of a citizenship question. We all know how challenging this was. And congratulations to everyone out in our borough in Queens. We managed to achieve a response rate of 62.8%. It may be lower than it would have been otherwise, but we are very proud of it. And I just want to thank everyone at DYCD for promoting the census and helping us in our efforts. So
I did.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for the
you for that.
outstanding work you do.
Kudos, kudos.
Yay, yay.
Before I call and entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Thanksgiving, obviously, as the word says, it's a time to say thanks. While
Yes.
it's been a very, very tough 2020, we saw things that we never thought we would see, feel, and deal with. And yet we have to be thankful for the fact that A, we're here, B, we can be part of such an outstanding group of individuals who are doing their utmost to help others. And that is a gratifying and satisfying feeling. So I wish everyone a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. We hope and pray that 2021 will be a good, healthy, prosperous, and wonderful new year.
Yes, yes.
I will now entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. It's now 7:45 p.m.
Greg Hambrick, I make a motion.
Second,
By Tamika
Gideon
Robinson.
Buckley.
Tamika Robinson, second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Good night. Be safe, everyone.
God bless. Thank you very much. Be well. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to
Happy
next
holidays, everyone.
Thank you all.
Take care. Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Good night, Hashil. Good night,
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Thank you all.